The final session of the Asian Financial Forum 2010 centered really on investment and on banking in the new economic era. Charles Lee of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange was one of the speakers, as were a number of representatives from major banks around the world. But first, delegates were given an opportunity at lunch to listen to Professor Nouriel Roubini of New York University.
My fear is that the strategy of China can work for a year or two, but it's going to lead to even more glut of capacity when there is already a massive amount of excess capacity. And that's going to lead eventually to situations of overcapacity of non-performing loans. So the challenge of China is to really change the model of growth from net exports to private consumption demand. If I'm correct that by the second half of the year, there's going to be a slowdown in growth in the US, Europe, and Japan, I think there could be the beginning of a market correction, because the macroeconomic news are going to surprise on the downside, because even the earnings news are going to surprise on the downside, because the ability of firms to cut costs is going to run its course, and with a weak recovery and deflationary pressure, top-line revenue growth is going to be limited, and therefore earnings are going to surprise on the downside. The final observation is that in spite of this downside risk, we avoided the worst, we avoided near depression, we avoided the financial meltdown, and however bumpy, there is a beginning of a US and a global recovery, and the recovery is certainly much more robust in Asia. There is a region that, because of its own financial, macro, and policy fundamentals, has a much better outlook for sustained long-run economic growth, as long as some of those policy challenges that I discussed are going to be faced by the policymakers.
Resources, so has to be more sustainable development. And I would say in this dimension, it's not just for the environment that China has to become more energy efficient, but also for another reason. Whenever China grows very fast, they demand more resources around the world, the price of oil energy goes up, and that's a negative terms of trade effect on China. If China would become more environmentally efficient in the use, for example, of energy, they will demand less energy, oil, and so on, and therefore their growth is not going to lead to such a pickup in commodity demand is going to crowd out than the recovery. So China should become more efficient and deal with the environment, not just because of the care of the environment, but because you avoid the excessive increase in commodity prices that is a disadvantage for a commodity exporter like China.
If we can say that both of the exchanges, if both of the markets are depending on the Chinese economy, and if the two could be combined, the Greater China market would reach a total of a very high number and will be ranked the second in the world. And if we look at the equity turnover, if we to include Taiwan, we will be the third. And in terms of the fund raised, the Greater China would be the highest in the world.
The better the motherland developed, the better the Hong Kong future may be. So I might make an analog for this. If the better the development of the domestic market, the better growth will be achieved in Hong Kong. So I believe in the future, if only as long as the economic development is sound and stable and fast in the mainland, then the Hong Kong market will definitely have greater achievements and more competent.
Hong Kong financial market or financial institution has a mature and open financial market, basically Hong Kong market. It's freedom, openness, and well-defined regulatory framework, legal system. Those are the strengths and competitive advantages of Hong Kong market. In the future, for the next decades, Hong Kong must be deeper their strengths, their competitive edge. I mean the openness of the market. Don't just depend on China.
And also, I think Hong Kong in the Greater China area have a significant role to play, especially for the financial markets. I believe such role will become more and more influential in the future integration between the mainland Taiwan and Hong Kong.
I think in the future that many Chinese capitals will go to the Taiwan market and try to find investment opportunities, and we will have a closer cooperation between the straits. There will be some sensitive issues, and so Hong Kong could be used as a vehicle for this kind of investment. And that's why we can say that Hong Kong will definitely play a very important role in the financial integration in the Greater China area.